Hi guys, and welcome to Movies in Lockdown, and today we'll be discussing WandaVision Episode 6. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Before we begin, this is going to be a spoilers discussion. So spoilers, and more spoilers. You've been warned. This episode really gives the show a whole new energy, and that's partly because the show has gone through another jump in time, moving away from the 80s and now into the early 2000s. The other reason is because of our unexpected guest who turned up, not just to surprise Wanda, but everyone watching last week's episode. His presence on the show really adds a whole new element that just adds to the list of ever-growing questions surrounding Wanda's Hex, Agnes, and let's just get into it. This episode opens with another banger of an opening, this time influenced by early 2000s sitcom Malcolm in the Middle, but it also borrows from 80s sitcom Alf, which showed the titular character making his way around the family home, capturing everyone in a camcorder, often disturbing the privacy of the family. Here we see Billy and Tommy with their own camcorder, catching their family by surprise, but also trying to get a reaction out of them. First Wanda, who's getting ready in the bathroom, and then Vision, who's just reading a newspaper, until the twins snatch it from him. They even rile up Agnes, who's hunched over grabbing a drink from the fridge, which, knowing Agnes, she's probably looking for some alcohol. Her pants, though, is probably the highlight for me, not because I'm perving on her butt or anything. It's just that the word naughty on her pants perfectly sums up the character. It's just right on brand for her. I don't know why, but I found it funny how they credited Pietro as himself. It just stands out since the rest of the family, including Agnes, gets credited by their names. Yeah, this definitely is a subtle hint at him potentially being an imposter. The whole alternative rock-inspired opening and the way it's shot, along with the text that pops up to credit the character, is just perfect. They managed to do their own take on Malcolm in the Middle's theme song, Boss of Me, without it feeling like a cheap imitation. The Malcolm in the Middle influence is strong in this episode, with Billy even breaking the fourth wall and talking directly to the audience, much like Malcolm did on his show. It frames both Billy and Tommy as the main focus, with both taking turns to address the viewers. This episode is probably one of my favorites so far, simply because it manages to find a way to throw as much fan service to the audience as possible by being a Halloween-themed episode. Yes, that means we get costumes based on the comics, and little Billy is the first one to don his superhero costume. It really is a great attempt at making it look as closely as possible to the one he wears in the comics, but also giving it a homemade feel. For the first time ever on screen, we get Wanda's comic book accurate outfit, which fans have wanted to see since she was announced to be part of the MCU. The costumes/outfits that Wanda have worn across multiple films have all been more modernized and simplified versions of her costume in the comics. She would mostly be seen sporting a red leather jacket and corset, but now since it's a Halloween theme episode, we get to see her Scarlet Witch costume, complete with the cape, gloves, and that iconic headpiece. Everyone seems to think it looks silly, but for me it's perfect. They really nailed the design. They even give a reason for the design, with Wanda saying she's dressed up as a Sokovian fortune teller, which makes the outfit a traditional attire from her country. Wanda seems pretty proud of her costume, yet Pietro isn't too impressed and says it's worse than the time they had homemade costumes when they got Thypus. Here we see another change to the new format, a cutaway scene showing a flashback. We see a younger Wanda and Pietro dressed up for Halloween in Sokovia, and their costumes really are familiar. Are those Natasha and Nick Fury costumes? It's a funny little scene, with them receiving a fish from an old lady. Yeah, you can tell Halloween wasn't that great in Sokovia. I can't imagine them getting plenty of candy whilst trick-or-treating in their neighborhood. Wanda says it's not exactly how she remembered that event, but Pietro says something that really makes you think and question if he's a reliable narrator or not, especially since we still don't entirely know if he is the real Pietro. He tells Wanda, "You probably suppressed a lot of the trauma." Wanda just gives a forced smile and walks off. We know that both characters have experienced a lot, especially growing up in a war-torn country. It's clear that ever since his arrival that Wanda is still struggling a bit. Maybe coming to terms that he is alive again, or just in doubt as he doesn't look anything like she remembered. Okay, more fan service, this time with Vision. We get that classic green and yellow costume. Seeing it makes you appreciate the changes that they made when adapting the character for the big screen. That yellow cape with a huge collar would have looked silly on screen. Vision seems less than enthusiastic about the whole outfit at first, but apparently Wanda really wanted him to wear it, since she has a thing for Mexican wrestlers. Seeing them flirt in Spanish is humorous. It's a sweet moment that makes you completely forget that they just had a huge argument the night before. Seems like all is forgiven for now. Pietro coming across as the slacker uncle is a surprising choice for the character. Honestly, I had no idea what he would do with him, but making him the man-child of the family really works. He fits in with the rest of the family, especially the kids, who despite pointing out he's immature, really have taken to him more so than Wanda. Vision doesn't know how to sum him up, since he's just getting to know him, but he thinks he's really good with the twins. Things aren't okay between Wanda and Vision. Even Billy chimes in to let us know that things have been different between them. It's the kid's first Halloween, and he's decided to skip out on them to be involved with the neighborhood watch. Wanda is disappointed with him, and it's understandable, since it's probably the only chance they'll get to spend it as a family. Pietro steps in and reassures them both. He'll be more than enough to handle the kids. You can tell that there's still some lingering tension between Wanda and Vision. The look on Wanda's face when Vision leans in to kiss her, not even on her lips, shows her conflicted. Even when she sees him off, you really feel that she doesn't want to let him go. Poor Wanda. That scary face that Pietro pulls off to frighten Wanda. Classic. It really isn't anything original in terms of humor, but I still loved it. Okay, as if having comic book accurate costumes for Wanda and Vision wasn't enough to whet your appetite? Yes. They also have Pietro don his comic book costume. In a flash we see him speed off with Tommy, and they both come back, dressed up as Quicksilver. Well, they nailed it, but honestly it looks like something that they would put together for the character if this show was made in the 80s or 90s. Still, I'm glad we get to see these costumes, regardless of how silly they look. Okay, so back to check up on Sword, and tensions are high after Hayward's attempt at taking out Wanda, and of course their little chat when Wanda paid them a visit. Hayward at this point seems unreasonable, and just set on doing whatever it takes to finish Wanda. From his conversation with Monica, you can tell he has a disdain for enhanced individuals like Wanda. As much as Hayward comes across as the biggest dick around, I really think there's more to his motivations than we know about. We know that he's had to single-handedly keep Sword from falling apart during the 5 years before the blip. During those 5 years, there's no telling what sacrifices or methods he had to employ to keep the organization from dissolving. But it very much has affected him and changed him as a person, for the worst. But that line, maybe it was a good thing you weren't here when your mother died. That's just too much, and deserves a punch to the face. Luckily Monica is level-headed and doesn't react. That is, until he gets her and her team removed from the base. Seeing not just Monica, but Jimmy kicking ass was fun. Too bad Darcy didn't get the memo. She missed out on whooping some sword grunts. As much as I'd love to see her joining in the fight, her being surprised that they were planning to take out the sword grunts was a much better moment, just for the humor it brought to the whole situation. Yeah, I think we saw this coming. Once tensions between Tyler and our fan-favorite trio started to show, it was only a matter of time before they branched out from under Tyler and take their own approach to stop Wanda's hex. So we get to see Wanda and her family, sans Vision, out trick-or-treating, and noticeably the whole town is different. It's like the neighborhood has suddenly come to life, as it feels more populated than before. I guess the holidays brings everyone out, including the town's children. Yeah, the very same children who have been absent so far, but more on that later. The kids go off to do their own thing, and Pietro yells out, "Unleash hell, demon spawn." If that's telling of what's to come, or it's just a nice nod to the comics, where the twins are in fact fragments of a demon's soul, I appreciate it either way. But if it does end up meaning that Mephisto comes into play, then this show will end up breaking the internet. Even more than it already has, with the twists and turns we've had so far. Funny how it's Pietro saying it, as if he isn't suspicious already. This line just makes you go, Anyways, Wanda's trying to find out if this really is her brother or not, and I don't blame her. Everything about his Pietro character seems too good to be true. Regardless, he seems to be a hit with the twins. They both seem to be enjoying spending time with Uncle P. That subtle kick-ass reference that one of the twins say, leaving Wanda to ponder. Kick-ass? I see what you did there, Marvel. That was a reference to Evan Peters, and the original Pietro, Aaron Tyler Johnson, both starring in Kick-Ass, before their respective roles as the same character in different franchises. Okay, so Uncle Pete definitely has Pietro's powers, and is using it to full effect here, to cause trouble around the neighborhood. So much for being a good role model to the twins. With his super speed, he's able to get away with everything, and it's interesting that the people around them only seem mildly bothered by what's happening. Wanda happens to come across Herb, their next door neighbor, and a member of the neighborhood watch, and it's through their conversation that you see that Vision not only lied to Wanda, but is far from giving up on discovering what's outside their hometown. Herb confirms that Vision is not on duty, and even asks her if she needs something changed. Yeah, I'm sure if she did, she wouldn't ask. She would just manipulate it as she sees fit. Okay, so we see what Vision is up to, and what he comes across is just strange. While there are kids and their families running around nearby, just in front of him he spots a woman who seems to be trying to hang up a Halloween decoration, except she's just swinging her arm, unable to each time. To make the whole thing even more unsettling, you can see her shedding a tear. The poor lady seems broken. So this is basically Vision playing detective for the day, and really exploring the town to get a grasp of the effects the hex has on the people around him. And it's only going to build up to him eventually trying to leave the hex. Now for a commercial break. And this time we get one done in a sort of 90s claymation stop motion style. It really is different than anything we've had up to now, since the previous adverts were all live action and utilized the same actors. Here the focus is a boy stranded on an island in the middle of the ocean. The boy is alone, except for a crab crawling about just near him. He weakly utters, "I'm so hungry, I'd eat anything." Someone hears him, a really energetic shark, who emerges from the ocean and says, "Hungry? I remember hungry. I used to be like that all the time." The boy looks up at him, curious, yet hopeful at the same time, to question him, "What did you do?" The shark proudly says, "Snacked on your magic, bro," while revealing a box of strawberry yogurt. Now this would be a cool snack commercial for kids, if it didn't take a dark turn. What follows next is depressing for what seemed like a sweet commercial. This is definitely one of the darkest commercials on the show. We see the boy trying and failing over a period of time, maybe days or longer, and as time passes, you see him shrivel up until finally he becomes a skeleton, meaning he died trying to open up the yogurt in hopes of feeding his hunger. The ad ends with the shark chiming in, "Your magic, the snack for survivors." What a way to go, dying alone and from starvation. Now I think like with all the other adverts we've seen so far, this is another nod to what's happening with Wanda, and more importantly, it brings us to present day, unlike the previous adverts, which were references to past traumas in her life. The shark could be a representation of a predator, someone seemingly strong, yet weak, feeding on her power to get stronger. From what we know, it's Wanda's magic that's creating the hex around Westview. So could there be someone who is using this as an opportunity to increase their own strength? Which will eventually make Wanda herself not only a pawn, but also a sacrifice if they consume her? Especially if she isn't aware of the person using her, even with the questions Wanda has of her own, on how the hex really came to fruition. We haven't seen her actively trying to get answers of her own, because she believes she is in control. I wouldn't bet on this being 100% right as to what's going on, or at least what this advert is trying to give us a hint towards, cause it really doesn't seem that clear. It's just another device to really bring about more theories and debates. So we resume back to the show, and it's much later than before. Here it seems to be later in the evening, as the sun has set, and Wanda is still out with Pietro and the twins. After spending most of the day together, Wanda still doesn't seem sure about Pietro, and neither are we as an audience. His line about him coming to town unexpectedly to create tension with the brother-in-law and stir up trouble with the twins and give Wanda grief is another line I couldn't ignore. Just who or what brought him to Westview, just to toss the wrench into Wanda's idealistic reality? We know that Wanda didn't have any part in bringing him into this bubble. She's made for herself, and that's the very reason why she is still not comfortable accepting him as her brother. When Wanda asks him what happened to his accent, he flips the question on her. It's hilarious, especially when she doesn't respond back. We know that originally when Wanda was introduced into the MCU in Age of Ultron, she had a thick European, Sokovian accent. The accent was slowly phased out, starting with her appearance in Civil War, where it was noticeably turned down, and changed to sound more American. By the time of Infinity War, it was completely gone. Her change from her original Sokovian accent to American was explained by Elizabeth Olsen herself, as well as the Russo brothers who directed her prior to WandaVision. Although it wasn't addressed on screen, it was something that happened as a result of her being trained by Natasha, who was teaching her how to be a spy. And also because she was in a completely different environment, so naturally she adapted to speaking with an American accent. Even though her accent sounded weird in some places, I really warmed up to the idea of having a hero in the MCU who was from a different part of the world and they didn't have a standard American accent, which most of the MCU heroes seem to share, as they are more or less based in the States. It was nice to see another region of the world, although fictional, get some representation. This was long before Black Panther, but anyways, let's get back on track. Pietro saying that his memories are fuzzy and that he got shot in the street like a chump for no reason is perhaps one of the biggest giveaways that he's an imposter, unless I'm reading into it too much. We know that Pietro died heroically by using himself as a shield to protect Hawkeye and the kid he had with him from Ultron, who was firing at them in a last-ditch effort to cause some casualties. He seemed to have accepted his death in that moment, so why would he say he died like a chump? Okay, it's here we finally see the kids showing more of the powers they are known for having in the comics. Without even realizing it at first, Tommy uses super speed to make his way past a few blocks and back to where he started in a couple of seconds. Tommy is really excited, and so is Pietro, since now they both have the same powers. It's interesting that his super speed ability seems to have just came out of the blue, just like his ability to age at will. But we have known from the start that these kids are special. Their inclusion on the show would eventually lead them to developing powers, and maybe even setting them up for more. These kids have been prominent members of the Young Avengers. Depending on their future in the upcoming episodes, we could see them branch out and be a part of the team. Before they head off, Wanda makes sure to warn them not to go past Ellis Avenue, which is some foreshadowing. So we jump back yet again to Monica and her team, and after escaping from Sword, they are able to find somewhere where they can take cover and gather more information that Hayward has included them up on. Darcy is able to hack into his private information and find out that he has implanted a tracking device on Vision's body. With that, they can not only track him, but pinpoint other people within the Hex. You can see that some people within the Hex are moving around frequently, while those that are further away from Wanda are completely still, almost like statues, even though they are alive. It's here that we get an indication that this is probably where Wanda's power stops having any kind of effect on the residents. It seems that there are only so many people that she can control at a time, or in a certain range, even though they are all still within the Hex. We see Vision attempting to communicate with the people who are unable to move or react in any way, before deciding to search the area from above. Amongst the dark gloomy setting, only one thing seems to catch his attention, a car with the headlights turned on, but unable to seemingly move. Who else should be behind the wheel, other than our resident helpful neighbor? Yes, Agnes. You can't have an episode without her making an appearance, in some capacity. Unlike everyone else in the area, who Vision was unable to communicate with, Agnes responds to him when he uses her name. Agnes seems to be in a weird state of mind, and questions where the town square is, something that even Vision seems to question. He was under the impression, as well as us the viewers, that Agnes was from Westview, so why would someone familiar with their own hometown end up getting lost? This is just one of many subtle hints that we've had throughout the show, that Agnes is not a resident of Westview. She is just as much a newcomer as both Wanda and Vision. Vision attempts to bring back the real Agnes, to talk to her, rather than the one he assumes is her under Wanda's influence. Immediately, she seems to be in a state of panic, just as Norm was when he brought him out of his mind control. Agnes panics, and she reveals to Vision something he didn't know himself, that he is dead. Agnes confirms, just as Norm did, that Wanda is the problem, and she can't be stopped. Now things only get more weird, as she randomly starts to burst out laughing. Well, more like a cackle. That's a lot like a witch's laughter. Well, she is dressed up as one, so why not go full on witch? Vision reverts her back as she was before, and as Agnes drives off back to the heart of the town, we see the camera zoom in, confirming that the exact neighborhood Vision is at this moment is none other than Ellis Avenue. The same neighborhood that Wanda warned the twins not to go. So this is what she was trying to avoid. the twins from seeing, an almost lifeless part of the reality, despite it having people. After meeting with Agnes, it just makes Vision that more determined to venture out further beyond Ellis Street. He wants to get to the outskirts of the Hex. We go back to Monica, and she seems to have made preparations with the same engineer that she mentioned in last week's episode, a person who she seems to have trust in making something that's capable of breaking into the Hex, which is now ready. But Darcy is quick to warn her that it might be a bad idea. Doing some more digging, she's able to pull up another one of Hayward's secrets. He was keeping track of her blood work after she underwent some tests back in episode 5. The energy from the Hex has rewritten her cells on a molecular level, transforming them. You can see Jimmy's face concern, but Monica is determined not to let that stop her from going back inside the Hex. She is willing to do whatever it takes to help Wanda, even if it means risking her life. Okay, so it's clear as day that this is setting up Monica to undergo some sort of transformation. Perhaps this is what they will use to give Monica her powers, or at least a hint towards her developing it at a later point, if she doesn't get it in the remaining episodes. While Darcy decides to remain to dig up more information, Monica and Jimmy go off to meet Monica's contact. We head back inside of Westview, and Wanda seems to be warming up to Pietro, more so than before, with both sharing a lovely moment, saying that their parents would appreciate the town. The whole moment just gets more emotional from there, as Pietro decides to press Wanda with his own questions about their surroundings. Before this episode, the town was always populated, but not this much, especially now with so many children about. Even Vision pointed it out last episode, and now Pietro is questioning her about it, bringing up that she probably didn't include the children before because she was trying to be empathetic towards them, being kids, compared to the older adults. We know that the adults under Wanda's mind control are experiencing their own torture inside their minds, so Wanda is saving the children from the experience. Him dissecting the whole scenario and even saying he's impressed really takes her by surprise. Even with Wanda being at the center of all of this, she's still completely clueless as to how it all started. The way Pietro seems to be pressing Wanda for information here seems like he's more interested in the whole process behind what has created a Hex. Him admiring her work seems strangely out of character. I don't think her brother would be fascinated by what she is doing, by essentially taking a whole town hostage and shaping it to fit her needs. As Wanda gets more emotional trying to remember how she created a Hex, she's taken aback by Pietro, who now looks like a corpse. It's very much a similar moment, just like the one she had with Vision a few episodes back. What's causing her to see this is still unclear. It's almost like she's haunted by the death of her loved ones. It's a grim reminder that even with everything in this reality, the two people who are important to her have now passed on. Darcy really is the unsung MVP of this show, simply because she's just awesome at what she does. We see her come across something big, a project called Cataract. Just what is Hayward planning to do? He definitely has more up his sleeve. The missiles was just a minor plan of attack. What he has next is definitely going to be a lot bigger. Just before we can see what Darcy has uncovered, the whole base is alerted to Vision, who is now at the border of the Hex. The next scene we get is finally Vision making his way through the Hex and setting foot outside of Westview. While he does manage to make his way through, we see him slowly start to fall apart as the Hex start to dismantle his body. Vision is determined to make contact with the outside world and somehow help the people inside of Westview. But we knew that going outside would spell doom for him. The Hex is keeping him alive. Without it, he's just back to how he was before, a dead corpse that's been dismantled. Billy immediately rushes to Wanda to let her know what's happening with Vision. It's interesting that she isn't aware until Billy tells her what is happening. But then again, there has to be limits to her powers. She's essentially controlling everyone in the town, so that's where her energy is focused on. Everyone is concerned over Vision, except for Pietro, who makes a snarky comment about Vision not being able to die twice. Wanda doesn't have time for him, and it really is satisfying seeing her blast him aside so that she can concentrate on finding her husband before things get even more worse, especially with his life hanging by a thread. Wanda is able to help Billy focus his abilities and finally locate his father, which makes her immediately stop everything around her and widen the range of the Hex. Yeah, she made it bigger than before, this time extending beyond Westview. We see Monica and Jimmy, and just about everyone try their best to escape the Hex, consuming them as it grows bigger and bigger. So that's where this episode ends. with Wanda going all out to stop her husband from dying a third time. Wow, what an episode. This show has yet to lose any steam. Every week it manages to deliver a satisfying episode by giving us just enough to keep us hooked, but also saving some delicious morsels for future episodes. As much as I wish the episodes were longer, as the show is frantically paced at times, I think it is a sign of the show's quality, and me just being spoiled with the whole binge format. Week-to-week episodes is what makes the build-up within the show work so well. Episode MVP! Okay, the episode MVP this week is Evan Peters, the latest addition to the show. He's one of the few actors on the show whose work I'm not entirely familiar with outside of the X-Men films. His role as Pietro in the Fox X-Men films is what made him a breakout star and a fan favorite, which is why casting him on the show has had such a positive reaction from fans. Working in television is nothing new for the actor, who has had a long career in a long list of shows, including one particular show on FX, which is now Disney owned, so it wasn't difficult getting him on board for WandaVision. He has made a name for himself on the small screen, playing a prominent role in the American Horror Story franchise, where he has starred in multiple seasons, playing a variety of characters. I honestly never got into the show, but now I really have to check it out because of his involvement. Having him on WandaVision is a blast. His character adds so much mystery, not just to his actual identity, but also his motivations. Which after his interactions with Wanda, I'm leaning more towards him being an imposter. But we'll see. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now about WandaVision. This really is up there with my favorite episodes from the show so far, and I can't wait for next week's episode, especially since it's based on one of my favorite modern day sitcoms, Modern Family. Hopefully you'll join me again to discuss the show some more. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the show. Please feel free to subscribe, like, and comment below. And hey, maybe this wasn't your cup of tea. And that's okay. Just remember to take care and stay safe.